as you go on board with Roger Brogdon there. I mean, just 60-foot times are not very good at all. 102 for Roger, 103 for V. Gaines, just not getting the cars to launch properly, and it's hurting them on the racetrack.
And just a reminder of the nature of what we're doing here now on the internet is live. It's even more live than when we normally do it, and so occasionally you might catch a bad word. We apologize if that's happened. We hope you understand there's not a great deal we can do about it. Kurt Johnson and Warren Johnson, father and son, Johnson and Johnson.
Take a look at our pro stock round wins since the countdown started. Jason Line, obviously the points leader, running away with it with 11 rounds. But how about Kurt Johnson? Not even in the countdown, and he's got 7 round wins. He's done a great job since the countdown started, getting a win in the first race and a runner-up in the second.
8 drivers in the top 10 have fewer than 4 round wins.
Yeah,
that's staggering. No wonder Jason's running away with this combination of a good car and nobody's chasing him. He's got a line lock on this thing.
For KJ, nice, good line.
Thank you.
For KJ, though, that's a lot of it is attributable to the new car. And, well, I guess I wish they had it a lot earlier in the season.
Well, and Kurt Johnson's never wanted to make excuses. And you know, he said, I mean, they had it in his mind when I talked to Brainerd. He said they had it enough time to get it figured out, but it just took them a little bit longer than what they thought it was going to. But he knew at Brainerd that this car was going to be better. He told me, he says, we just got to get a handle on it. We're finding out what exactly likes, because the chassis is built completely different. It's not as stiff as the old cars they used to run. And he says he knows it's going to run better, but they just got to find out what it wants. And, well, he found out what it wanted after Indy.
Mike, do you have any idea how similar or dissimilar Kurt's car is to his dad's car there in the next lane?
I think they're very similar. They're obviously Warren likes to run his own program, and they run a little bit different, but they do compare notes. But they built the cars fairly similar.
You know, the way you guys were talking about Kurt Johnson took me back to a time where he wasn't happy with his car's performance. You see him cross the finish line with a 670. Nice move up 7 spots.
Oh, yeah.
I remember him standing there with a hacksaw. Had the hood off, cutting the bar out just because he didn't like the way it felt. Sure enough, he goes out and improves.
There you go.
I've seen Dave that many times. I remember Bob Pickett and Mickey Thompson's U.S. Marines Monza in there. He didn't like it, and he was cutting a diagonal out in the middle of the car and went out there and it ran better.
Dave, were you disappointed? I mean, you had a great play on words on Jason Line.
And you followed up with another one, and I missed it.
But we got nothing from anybody else.
Hello, guys.
Nothing.
Well, some of us are trying to concentrate on the business at hand.
We're giving you all of these lines. Let me keep it going for a while.
Here's Greg Stanfield and Vincent Nobile. Good time to talk about Rookie of the Year. And the 2 top candidates, not the only candidates, but Vincent Nobile and Arana Jr. And we've talked about this a couple times already. And I got to tell you, my position has changed since the last time we talked.
Well, and that's Vincent Nobile came out really strong in the beginning of the season. Remember, Pro Stock Motorcycle, they didn't even contest their first race until Gainesville, 3 races in. Hector Arana Jr. really struggled there, but he's peaking at the right time. So now it's a pretty good old horse race down to the wire, I think, for that Rookie of the Year honors.
Look at that right there. 19 years, 5 months old. Oh, I hate it.
Yeah, I don't want to go Shirley Muldowney and start, putting the different classes on different scales and whatnot. But Mike, you're talking Pro Stock Motorcycle, you're talking Pro Stock cars. Should one of them weigh a little bit more?
I mean, obviously they're different driving styles or riding styles, however you want to say it, but they're both hard to do it well. And both Vincent and Hector Arana Jr. do it well. And the key is, making consistent runs, having consistent lights, and hitting your shift points, because the driver input in both those classes is very important. I mean, if you do a bad job, it definitely shows up on the computer when you go back and download the information. If you do a really bad job, it shows up on the racetrack on the run.
Again, a little right lane wiggle there, this time for Greg Stanfield. Vincent Nobile, you saw his dad, who is a great Pro Stock racer.
Nice.
And celebration underway. 665 with an 8. And Vincent goes #1. Wow. Let's see that one again.
Well, we haven't seen anybody under 1 second flat and 60 foot, but Vincent was pretty close to it. He was like a 1:00.09, one of the better ones we've seen, and just continued it down the racetrack. Makes a very nice run. Irene Mitzos loves what she sees on that scoreboard.
She's a crazy lady, and we love her.
Well, Kurt Johnson is now online with us. Kurt, you just saw that run for Vincent Nobile going #1.
Any kind of run you make that's #1 must be pretty good.
Yeah, I guess those go together, don't they? What about you and what you're doing here in the countdown when you're not part of the countdown, but you can ruin a lot of other people's day? How does that feel for you?
Well, it's just a matter of winter's coming on and the kids need new shoes and we want to stay warm, so we're just trying to win some races and make some money. That's all it is. It's not a matter of ruining somebody's day.
Well, Kurt, I talked to you about all the changes on this car from your old car and having to move the weight around because it was lighter and trying to figure out that balance. Now, obviously, it's been working well since the countdown has started. Is it working well enough that you would probably stick with this combination going into next year, or are you still experimenting with it?
Well, we're pretty close. We haven't made a real good run here yet in Phoenix. You know, the track's been hot. We ran real well in Dallas, and we tried to simulate that setup coming here. We missed on the first run. We picked up 400s on the second run, so that was good. We're going to stick with it, and you know what? One race and run her up to the next. So it's not something we want to stray away from right now.
Stat Guy here. Hey, Curtis, Stat Guy here. Do you know your dad hasn't won a round of racing in over a year? Can you fix that?
I'll let you tell him that.
I mean, that is unbelievable. I'll tell him that. I'm not afraid.
I haven't mentioned that.
And
I just, you know, every morning I see him at the shop. He's all bright. I go to kill 8 o'clock. It's not the first thing that's coming out of my mouth.
yeah,
That's for sure.
That's because you're a very smart man. Thanks for the time, JJ.
Oh, thanks. Great meeting you guys.
Have a good weekend.
All right, you too.
Well, here is Alan Johnson. No relation. He moves up 4 positions to 9th. And Ronnie Humphrey moves up 2 to 5th. So there is some track out there that can be worked with.
Yeah, Alan Johnson, 669. That run was terrible when he went a 669.
I'm telling you, if they change the paint job back to the old paint job, they go a lot better.
He's really been struggling with that new car, and I mean that thing was 103 and 60 foot. And it just, I mean, it did not go straight, at least in the early part of the run.
Larry Morgan and Erica Enders.
Well, I want to take a look. Watch the left side of your screen. I mean, that car made a right turn. He reeled it back in, only 103 and 60 foot. Didn't look like it was going to be anything, and yet a 669 still came up on the board, and he left a lot on the table on that run.
All right, so what do we think's going on in the right lane?
Well, the right lane, before all the improvements, was always one of the harder lanes to traverse down for, and not necessarily with the pro stocks, but I mean for the fuel cars, I know for a fact. And but each lane was unique in its own way, and like I said, before the changes here, the track always, the right lane always wanted to drive you towards the center, so you always wanted to be to the right side of the groove when you came off of that concrete onto the asphalt to make that transition, so it didn't try to drive you across the center line.
Well, in terms of the launch pad itself, the concrete, which goes out to 701 feet, they made 40 feet that they pulled out, changed it, made it better, 40 feet wide, between the 180 and the 220-foot line. So that's out there, too. But there's been a lot of running on this track since all those changes have been made.
Yeah, and then we, you know, remember we haven't been here in over a year and a half, you know, and we still got the information, but it's a different track surface and obviously different conditions.
And
it's much hotter. Yeah, I mean, you know, you have information, but you can't use a whole lot of it right now. It's pretty much just go out there, let the clutch out on there, make your best guess, and then go back and see how close you hit it and start making adjustments from there.
7th and 8th when they started the run, and Larry Morgan's going to move up 1 spot with his 666 with a 9.
Larry's been strong on both passes today. He's done a nice job.
Coming up is Greg Anderson and Mike Edwards. Greg Anderson, boy, you talk about going from the bottom to the top to the bottom. What a time he has had. And go back to the U.S. Nationals. And look at the changes coming down here. I mean, he was really high. Everything's great. Everything's great. Whoa. They put in the points, and look at him starting to drop.
His first round losses with the first 2 races of the countdown. That'll definitely get you questioning what you're doing. And Greg's just basically been struggling. The good news for him is, as he even said, is the fact that it looks like Jason Lyon's probably going to win this thing, his teammate, and if he can't do it, then who better else to win it?
He says that with a lot of bravado.
Well, yeah, and
he's
he's a racer. I mean, and that's the politically correct thing to say. Not that Greg's always toting the company line. I mean, he wears his emotions on his sleeve.
He does.
But I mean, let's face it. I mean, if you can't win, that's the next best thing. But I guarantee you, Greg was the one. He wants to win the championship.
Well, he's 181 points behind in his pre-race press release. He kind of did exactly what we're talking about here. He's more or less conceded and tried to remind himself, I guess, to get himself back into the game that, the focus of this is to get his team cars first and second. So now he's kind of going into that defense mode now, making sure that Mike Edwards, the guys behind him, aren't going to sneak up on him. So he's got to get himself kind of retrained in his thinking a little bit.
Well, they say the best defense is a good offense. And
he's got offense.
He's got to go out there and just do what got him to the point going into the U.S. Nationals, where he was aggressive and he made good runs and he drove well to make sure he gets that #2 finishing in the countdown to the championship.
Mike Edwards over on the far side. You may remember they weren't able to finish Pro Stock Racing here a year ago, and they finished it up at Gainesville. And Mike Edwards won it. In fact, he beat Bob Yonke when that race was concluded at the Gainesville event.
That's the Bob Yonke? That's not what he wanted.
Not at all.
See Mike Edwards on that launch, the way the front end came up and that thing grabbed hold of a racetrack, a hot racetrack. That was impressive in my mind.
Well, it's impressive in everybody's mind. A new #1 is a very impressive thing, though not totally unexpected from Mike Edwards.
Well, nobody was under 1 second and 60 foot. Both Mike Edwards and Greg Anderson were. Mike Edwards quicker, 991, almost 100th of a second quicker than anybody else up to that point. So obviously Terry Adams and the team really hit the setup on that, and Mike Edwards did a great job driving to move to that #1 spot. Let's go on board with Greg.
Well, goodbye.
I didn't hear anything break. I just I don't know what the deal was there.
Well, we have our first Twitter question of the night. It comes from Wise Guy Takiro. It says, and I kind of go towards Mike on this one, when will NHRA no longer allow Pontiac bodies in Pro Stock?
You need to ask NHRA that.
Camaros, Mustangs is the future of Pro Stock cars.
To me, I mean, they don't make Pontiacs anymore, and in a perfect world, I mean, I'm, muscle car guys growing up in Southern California in the 60s and 70s, and I mean, you're right, it should be Mustangs, Challengers, and what was the other one I was talking about? Camaros. Geez, I even had a Camaro.
No Plymouth Cambridge 6.
Yeah.
Well, more specifically, isn't there something in the rule book, though, too, Mike, about, once a manufacturer, you got 7 years, basically?
That you can run. Yeah, both Pro Stock motorcycle and Pro Stock car that you can still run it.
I'd like to see a Cadillac. Wouldn't that be kind of cool?
Oh, yeah.
An Escalade Pro Stock?
There you go.
Pro Stock SUV. There's the new category.
Yeah, can you see WJ in a Cadillac? That'd be great.
Driving in Florida with his turn signal on.
What are you saying?
No, that's a legal thing in Florida. The eventual.
If you're as old as Warren, it is.
That's what I thought you said.
I didn't mean that one. I hope he's not listening.
Jason Line, the points leader, at Ron Krischer. They are currently 3rd and 4th. Krischer's the #3 guy.
Oh, Jason.
Wow, he didn't get it.
Yeah. Close.
Boy, he would have
Tied
thought he
him
would
and
have
lost
gone
it
there.
by
He was
speed.
trying.
Wow.
6:64 with the 2 for Jason Line. He comes in to the #2 slot behind Mike Edwards.